One of the things I really value is I'm able to work with really talented people from all over the world, including I have many talented Vietnamese colleagues.
Jeff Dean, Chief Scientist at Google, a visionary leader shaping the future of AI at Google DeepMind.
The potential of AI to transform the world is very, very large.
Vietnam, emerging as a new destination for global experts, visionary leaders, and the world's technology giants. What makes Vietnam one of the most promising frontiers for the future of AI?
Vietnam is in a very good position with your sort of strong education system. Bringing many, many people into this field is going to be really important.
The future is being shaped by innovation and the extraordinary people driving it. Across the world, Vietnamese talents are co-creating AI revolutions that redefine humanity. They are the bridges connecting Vietnam with the world.
Jeff Dean có thể nói là một cái huyền thoại ở Google. Những cái gì mà nền tảng nhất của Google như là Big Table, TensorFlow, Gemini là từ bác đó mà ra hết.
Một con người mà giỏi về kỹ thuật, giỏi về công tác và giỏi tầm nhìn. Số lượng người trên thế giới mà như kiểu như thế thì rất là hiếm.
Jeff, thank you very much for spending time with me. It's my honor to talk with you.
Thank you for having me.
So you are called like God of engineering. How does it feel to be a god? How does it feel?
I don't know about a god of engineering. I mean, I really like the problem-solving aspect of engineering and how can you build things that are useful to many people. And I think one of the beauties of software development and AI is relatively small groups of people can work together to tackle some problem and then have many, many people use the solution that they've built. And I think, that's what every engineer wants, is to have impact in the world in a way that, people love and respect your work.
So we understand that there's certain kind of limit for what AI could do. So my question for you is that for human being, if AI could help us so many different things, so what makes human being unique and relevant? How we stay smart in this smart world?
Yeah, I mean, I think one way of viewing AI is it's an incredibly helpful tool. And in some cases, it can become better than humans at doing some things. But humans can bring together, their own thinking and problem-solving skills and partner with AI and build and solve problems in ways that is better than any human or any AI system. Like the two together will actually work in concert and produce, better outcomes in nearly every case than an AI system alone or a human alone. And that, I think, is the potential and the sort of excitement that people see is really how do we augment what humans can do with AI.
Let's talk about ethical AI. I know that is one of the topics that you're very interested talking about.
Yeah.
So tell me about what in ethical AI makes you most concerned about. How are you solving the problem or issues around that topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of examples of, areas that you need to be, to really think carefully about when you're applying AI. So one is when you're training AI systems, often they learn from data, and that data often comes from the real world. And the real world is sometimes not the world that we want it to be. It's the world as it is. And so one of the ways that you can really help with AI and you need to be aware of is how do you kind of avoid perpetuating biases that exist in the world through data and even accelerate them, because AI systems can then use that data to make similar biased decisions more quickly. So that's a danger you need to avoid. And one of the ways you can avoid that is by making sure that the systems you train are sort of free from unfair bias and are as free as possible. And so there's a whole bunch of research techniques that can help reduce bias of AI systems, that can help eliminate certain kinds of biased data from training of AI systems. And this is just one example of many considerations in deploying real AI systems in the world. And, Google has a set of responsible AI principles that we published in 2018. There's 7 principles, and the bias issue is one of them. I think it's really good to think through all of those issues as you're thinking about what problems you want to solve with AI. and how you're going to solve them.
So for countries like Vietnam, we would like to build up AI capability. What would be the three most important considerations, in your opinion, for the policymakers?
Yeah, I mean, I think policymakers should think about how can you best educate people, both current students, but also people who are maybe already in the workforce and, want to pick up AI skills to be able to apply them to solve problems in their sort of whatever field of endeavor they're in, or whatever organization or company they're in. So that's one consideration, is what is the best way to get that into, the everyday processes of as many people as possible. I think another area is how do you encourage students who are interested in all kinds of different topics to think about AI as a tool that you can then apply to many different kinds of problems in the world or in society. And then also to think about what are the ways in which you can have the most impact in different areas that are important to Vietnam. So I think thinking about areas like education or healthcare, those are all areas where I think AI will have a pretty significant impact, and policymakers should adopt policies that sort of try to maximize that benefit.
For the first time, Jeff Dean, one of the defining architects of modern AI, has come to Vietnam. For more than 2 decades, he has been behind the foundations that shaped the entire AI era: Google's large-scale distributed systems, TensorFlow, the open-source platform that brought machine learning to millions of engineers, and the large language models now transforming the digital world. But what draws his deepest attention to Vietnam is not just the technology, it's the people.
Có những người mà thật ra là intern thôi, nhưng mà có những ý tưởng hay. Mà gặp Jeff Dean, nói chuyện với Jeff Dean là Jeff Dean cũng có thể là cộng tác. Cái văn hóa kiểu như thế này là rất là hiếm ở trên thế giới, mà nó chỉ xuất hiện ở Google thôi. Tức là một người mà tầm lãnh đạo cao như thế là lại đi làm việc trực tiếp với một em thực tập sinh.
Gen AI Summit, the largest international conference on generative AI ever held in Vietnam, was more than a place to share breakthroughs. It marked the first time Vietnam connected directly with the world's leading AI thinkers, from machine learning systems and computing infrastructure to ethics, talent development, and the future of education. The summit became an open lab, where Vietnamese students didn't just listen, they engaged directly with the scientists who are building the foundations of AI for humanity.
I've never seen a panel get so much interest and so many people stay throughout the whole entire day for a conference. And I got to make a lot of good networking connections and such as well.
The world has just witnessed a groundbreaking milestone. DeepThink, Google DeepMind's newest AI system, has solved mathematics at International Mathematical Olympiad gold medal level. And in this episode, a young representative joins host Khổng Loan to explore these big questions as the story moves forward.
So I would like to start by thanking you for having me today. So as you know, the use of AI has become very popular in learning as well as teaching, to the extent that many countries are now forced to apply policies and legislations with the AI used in education. So what do you think about this issue? Can AI replace the role of a teacher?
I think AI is going to complement teachers and enable them to sort of better address student understanding and student needs. If you think about, there's a lot of research on, the ability of students when they have an individualized tutor is much, much better than if they're in a traditional classroom setting where you might have one teacher and 30 students. Now, many people don't have the means to have an individualized tutor, and teachers, as much as they would like, really can't spend as much one-on-one time with students as they would really hope. So I think what the potential of AI can bring to education is really about how do you give as much of that individualized tutoring experience to students while enabling the teacher to focus on spending more time on what they really love, which is helping students gain understanding. So I think it's going to be a little while to figure out exactly the ways in which AI systems can really help in educational settings, but I think there's a lot of potential there. And over time, I think the ability to have a tutor that knows you and knows some material you're trying to learn and really understands how you learn best is going to be one of the ways in which, AI really fulfills its educational potential.
Thank you. So you would assume that AI would be used in furthering the development of educational tools rather than hindering it and taking away the significance of teacher to student contact?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we know teachers have a really valued role in students sort of learning. They're inspiring role models. They are, really helpful in helping students figure out their interests and their passions. But if you can also augment that with sort of AI-assisted instruction or tutoring, that I think will be even better.
I also hope that in the future, AI can be a new calculator. So then you can use AI, just Demis said, right? You can use AI to study deeper about physics, science. I often told my son that maybe he should study the universe, and then hopefully he will in the future help us occupy Mars, make a lot of progress in science, drug discovery, etc. Will be quite powerful.
As technology progresses, so does our goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should embrace AI systems as an additional educational tool, in the same way that there were, when calculators, as Thang was saying, entered kind of practical use in mathematics. Some people were resistant to that because, people will never learn to multiply numbers or something. But it turned out you can actually use it as a tool and enable students to go farther because they're now using this tool and can extend their mathematical horizons more quickly. So I think AI is sort of that, but not just for simple calculations, but for any subject.
I have a question for Mr. Tang. So in your opinion, how can we maintain the human advantage in the application of AI in education?
That's an interesting question. So yeah, I have been telling we really have to rethink education. So when we have alpha geometry, people was worried that there will be no geometry at the IMO. And Vietnamese actually love geometry. I myself did a lot of geometry. My teachers, famous teacher, did a lot of geometry. So they was quite nervous about the fact that AI gonna knock down one topic at a time. But I think it will eventually happen. I felt that AI will master though. But then I think we can take advantage of that. Maybe we'll take advantage of the fact that AI is really good about reasoning basic math, right? We can then try to encourage students to go from just imitate, just try to solve whatever had before into a new regional discovery. So maybe a new assignment for students would just be maybe they don't solve existing problem, but they try to come up with some new problem or try to solve some kind of new problem. I think that could be the new future. But there's a problem that actually how would we evaluate the assignment? That would maybe take some effort because there's no non-solution. Yeah. But maybe that's how, yeah.
To your point, I think students should always work hard.
In many places today, people are still skeptical of AI and afraid that it will replace human labor. So in your opinion, what are some human qualities that cannot be replaced by AI?
A more general view of this is I always think in a lot of cases where people are trying to apply AI, having an AI plus a human-based system in order to sort of accomplish things is better in many cases than either a human alone or an AI system alone. So I think those are areas where you want to think carefully about the overall way in which you're building software or systems or applications. And I think there's a lot of cases where things like, human interaction is much more natural between two people at the moment than a person and an AI system. Things like empathy, things like, creativity, I think humans are quite good at, and AI systems are getting better at that, but it's still kind of pretty clear when you see something that it's AI, if not as creative as the most creative humans. So
yeah, I think it would be great to somehow define values for AI. So I think that would be a great research question. Having some values, maybe we have different persona of AI system. Also, I think, as Jeff said, like empathy, I think emotion, these are something that actually would be quite important. I think the EQ part, IQ can be great, but I think EQ, we need to make AI better at that.
Yeah, and to your point about sort of AI guidelines, I think one thing that Google has done is we have a set of AI principles of 7 basic principles that we think about when we're sort of working to ask ourselves the question of like, how should we apply AI to this particular problem or this new product or this particular feature? And I think they're a pretty useful framework for thinking about that. Understanding bias, can this thing that we're thinking about be socially beneficial? All these kinds of things I think are quite useful to think about.
So when working to develop AI, do you also think about the extent to which it should be used? Like, is there a limit to when AI should not be further implemented?
I mean, I tend to think about that in terms of particular applications, right? So I think you do want to think carefully about how is this AI system going to be used in an autonomous vehicle or in a robotic system. And that then I think gives you, a particular concrete thing or concrete area you're thinking about. I think it's very hard to reason in the abstract about AI and what it should and shouldn't do, because really it comes down to what are you going to use it for, and then that imposes some constraints and some guidelines and some rough parameters at which you should be contemplating.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
In 2018, a group of talented Vietnamese engineers returned from Silicon Valley, beginning a journey to train the next generation in AI. From that classroom, Thắng Lương, senior expert at Google DeepMind, founded Viet AI, with the ambition of putting Vietnam on the global AI map through the capability, intelligence, and identity of Vietnamese people. In 2021, Viet AI evolved into the new Turing Institute, NTI, a non-profit organization with a community of over 24,000 members, having trained thousands of engineers across AI disciplines. Working alongside him is a group of overseas Vietnamese based in Silicon Valley, including Van Vu, Thuc Vu, and Quoc Le, all experts contributing to the shaping of AI worldwide. Today, NTI has built an ecosystem where young Vietnamese can learn, experiment, connect, and reach the world right from their own homeland.
Young people learn fast. Where should they start if they want to learn programming and build with AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good question. It's sort of how do you sort of gently introduce yourself or take classes or whatever to do this. I mean, I think one of the things to do is to start with small problems, like find some problem you think will teach you something or that will solve a problem you might care about, and try to write a simple program to do that with the aid of many online resources these days for both introduction to programming and computer science and software, but also there's now a lot of online resources about introductions to AI and machine learning at a variety of different sort of levels of sophistication. So I think assess what it is you know already and try to pick something that's at roughly the right level. Maybe it's a simple blog post explaining the basics of the idea. Maybe it's a calculus-based introduction to machine learning that's maybe a little more sophisticated and has an online textbook. There's some excellent, Coursera courses on a lot of these topics that are sort of like introductory college level material for ambitious students to kind of look at. I think learning by doing is always the best, though, because once you start writing little programs to do something, then you start gradually building a little bit fancier program or something that can do more things to solve some problem you care about. And if it's something you care about, you're going to be much more excited and motivated to teach yourself how to solve it.
I think you can even start with Dell programming. Mm-hmm. So we taught like that. We have a course at NTI that like Gen AI for everyone, where you can just do like right? Normally, I think normal people, when they ask Gemini, ChatGPT, they ask only very simple questions. But then as you use more, you will learn that you can add more instruction. Maybe like the description, the story about this like two animals should have only 5 sentences. like 50 word, use certain word or something like. Or I also learned myself to become a good prompt engineer. So I think you can also, student can do something like that first. So you just start to learn a bit more. Maybe you collect some kind of like essay of your style, and then start to fit the LM, the Gen AI model, and it can start to write in your own style. So you build up slowly, and then I think, even maybe in the next few years, maybe you don't need to do programming. Maybe you just need to write a good prompt, and it will teach you how to do programming. What do you think, Jeff? Do we need programming?
I love programming, so I will say often people can get a lot of value out of learning to program because it not only teaches you how to write software, but the process of writing software is really about taking complicated problems and breaking them down into simpler pieces, and how do you solve all those individual pieces and then put the solutions together into something that works. And that kind of structured organizational thinking, organized thinking, is useful in a lot of other things in life than just writing software. So even if you don't go on to become a professional software developer, I think that way of approaching problem solving is something that you can derive a lot of benefit from. And everyone should try it. It's fun. I find it fun. It might not be for everyone, but you should actually try it, explore it, see if you like it. Get some friends together, learn to program together. Right. It's fun. And
it's much simpler now. Like in 10 years ago, when I write my PC thesis, I wrote in MATLAB, by the way, using deep learning on GPU. You have to write like 100 lines of code. Whereas now with Python, with the deep learning thing, you can just write in like 5 lines of code. So it's already much simpler, but you still learn the concept, the basic concept, and then build very cool stuff with deep learning and AI and Gen AI.
Yeah, I actually think you learn a lot from studying existing software code, because that's been written by someone who probably has more programming experience than you do. And there's a lot of like subtle techniques in programming that you can often pick up fairly easily from seeing other people's code that you don't very easily come up with on your own. And so I think becoming a good programmer is often about reading other people's code. In addition, if you're going to work on a fairly complex software project, there's often many people involved in writing pieces of it, and you'll run across lots of code you haven't written yourself that you need to understand. So that's a good skill to have as well.
So Dr. Jeff Dean, you often mention about collaboration. So my question is, who inspired you and has helped you to prosper your research?
Sure. So one of my longest collaborators is my good friend Sanjay Gamawat. So he and I actually worked together before I joined Google. And then I moved to Google and I convinced him to join. And we've worked on a number of different projects over the years. We actually do what's called pair programming, where instead of having people writing code at 2 separate computers, we actually sit together and use one keyboard, one mouse. He usually types because he's pickier about spacing. But we sort of work through the problem-solving process together. And often I think that you find that, when you're writing a piece of software, there's literally 1,000 decisions you need to make in, some, few days of work. Yeah. And when you're actually working with someone, you often will talk through some of those decisions that are pretty consequential that you would make on your own if you weren't working with someone. And so that actually ends up with a much better result, because you sort of have a more, you have an outer dialogue rather than just an inner dialogue about how to solve this particular aspect of something. And I think he and I have very complementary kinds of viewpoints. I'll be like, let's go solve this. And he'll be like, hang on, let's think about it and how we're going to actually solve it. And I think that's a nice way of working. I think I've collaborated with my colleague Kwok Le, who's here in town, and he and I, he has much more machine learning expertise, and I have some expertise on how do you build large-scale distributed systems where you're using many, many computers to solve problems. And so Kwok and I collaborated on a project to use lots of computers to train a pretty interesting unsupervised machine learning model.
That's the famous cat paper.
The cat paper, yes.
Yeah.
So we actually trained the model on 10 million random YouTube video frames, and it sort of learned the concept of a cat without ever being told what a cat was. which is kind of cool.
That's the legendary paper.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's a nice example because Kwok and I brought different kinds of skill sets to the collaboration along with some of the other people involved in the collaboration. And we all worked together to see if we could solve this research problem. And I picked up more stuff about machine learning from Kwok, and he picked up more stuff about how do you build distributed systems. And then we kind of, went on our ways and worked on other things together and sometimes worked separately. So I think that kind of thing where you bring a mix of people who are not identical, every time you do that, you learn something.
Yeah. I'm at Google, I'm actually personally curious about how you and Sanjay can keep collaborating for that long time. Like, do you always have the same interest, or is there any point where you have diverse interests? Maybe you do health, like he do robotics, you do, I don't know, deep learning.
Yeah, I mean, we've had, periods where we haven't worked together for, on this particular project, but we always find something to work on together. I mean, I think that's part of the hallmark of a good collaboration is you can convince each other, maybe this problem that the other person wasn't thinking about is actually important and we should work on it for a while. So, that's very good. It can. It doesn't always.
Okay.
So for young people who want to enter this field, what advice would you give them?
I think there's so much potential in AI, and it's such a broad space that you should really, learn about it in general. But because it's such a broad space, you have the opportunity to kind of identify what are the particular problems or applications of AI or, research problems eventually you might want to tackle. Generally leads to much better outcomes and happiness is if you're working on a problem or an area you're particularly passionate about. In my career, tried to focus on what are problems I find interesting and are likely to be impactful. And I think that, that's what you should really strive for in what you're going to do, what you're going to study in school, what you're going to work on after that.
Dr. Thắng, would you like to add anything else?
Well, just say maybe be curious and don't be afraid because let's say if they want to do AI, just go and write some piece of code. Mm-hmm. And even for people who are very deep in technical, I would often advise students try to write some code base from scratch. Mm-hmm. Maybe read some paper. Just maybe look at some reference code and then just write from scratch. I often see the case that anyone who can write a large piece of code from scratch are usually a good candidate that we're looking for.
Thank you, Dr. Jeff Dean, and thank you, Dr. Thắng Lương, for your valuable time and wonderful insight.
Yeah,
thank you for sitting down with us.
Thank you for watching the show. See you next time.